Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Take Out the Stigma of Grief. Today, we are going to be talking about anticipatory grief and preparing for the death of a loved one. Today, I'm joined by Liz Shear, one of our bereavement counselors who specializes in working with children. Liz, welcome. Would you like to share how long you've been with Delaware Hospice and perhaps a little bit about your background and why you do what you do?
Sure. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. So again, my name is Liz Shear, and my background is actually in social work. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and as Nicole mentioned, I do work with children. I've been working with children for I don't even want to say how many years because that would imply that I'm older than I think I am. But no, I've been working with children for about, I think 13 years now or so, or something like that. My math might be wrong because I'm a social worker. I'm not a mathematician, but I came to Delaware Hospice about 2.5 years ago. And I love the fact that Delaware Hospice recognizes that children grieve and that they have a specific counselor for children that grieve. I actually came to this position because when I was younger, when I was 10 years old, I lost my father. It was a very sudden reason. He died of a heart attack. And, that was some years ago. I'm not 10 anymore, but that was some years ago. And there weren't any programs really for children that were grieving. I remember going to a support group, but said support group was with my younger brother and one other person. So I'm like, I remember saying, this is not a support group. I'm like, this is not a peer support. This is my brother and one other girl. And I think the other girl was my brother. My brother is 2 years younger than I am. So he was 8 and I was 10. And I think the girl that was in the group was maybe 9. So I get it that it was like 8, 9, 10 or what. But I'm like, this is not a support group. First of all, there's my brother in it. Gross. So it didn't really benefit me. I didn't think I couldn't really open up because I felt like my brother was there. And I was always aware that my brother could go tattle on me or something. And so I was really thankful that Delaware Hospice provides, a program for children specifically that are grieving.
And for the program, is correct me if I'm wrong, is it age 6 to 17? Does that
Yes,
sound about
yes.
right? Okay. All right.
There are exceptions, though, of course. If a student has an IEP, we can actually go up to the age of 21, depending on some of their
Okay.
learning uh, challenges and or their uniqueness. Let's just say.
Mhm. It's such a great program. I have a lot of experience with them and you all do a wonderful job in drawing on your personal experience. Just it brings something unique out that you really understand. Thank you for sharing that, Liz.
Sure, sure.
So let's talk a little bit about what it is. What is anticipatory grief? And I have some bullets here. Basically, it's about grieving someone before they die, that they are imminent, and to you're watching the loved one slip away little by little, and it's so hard. It's so hard for a caregiver to watch that, and anyone in that family. And in our presentation today, we're actually going to talk about what it's like for an adult and then what it's like from a child's perspective, because it is similar, but there are definitely some nuances and some things that are very unique to children. And then also share some ways to help children through this process. All right, our next slide. So here we have basically 5 ways to cope with anticipatory grief. Now, of course, there are more, but we thought we would just focus right now on these 5. Allowing the feelings of grief to help you prepare, educating yourself, talking to others who share in that grief, getting help and continuing to live your life, and then creating moments, your loved one can enjoy. So, Liz, as I walk through these, feel free to jump in. I'd love for this to be more of a conversation, and other people on the session, you feel free to send things into the chat or just comment or ask questions as need be. So this first one, allowing the feelings of grief to help you prepare. So if you know someone is declining, perhaps they're on hospice, you might take that as an opportunity to really look at how things have gone in the past. Maybe there's some things that you want to resolve, and you can take this as time to talk with that person. It might be feelings asking for forgiveness or just thanking someone, even saying I love you. Sometimes it's so hard to say that to people, but to take that time and just resolve things from the past. If the person is healthy and well enough, this could be a time that you're talking about any matters related to legal or financial. Also, for end of life care, perhaps to have that conversation, with the other person to say, what is it that you really want at the end of life? It could be anything from, you know, what would make you comfortable, in the room, what you want to wear, if you want music on, and then it can also go to what kind of service or ceremony that you would like following a death. So, just taking, I hate to say take the opportunity, but basically to, listen and feel those feelings, and then talk with your loved one.
And sometimes I think taking the time out to find out some of those wishes gives you a moment to say, okay, wow, okay, this is happening. This is, part of my reality, is trying to find out what my loved one wants. Sometimes we're surprised at what they want. Mom, you've been a churchgoer for how many years and you didn't want a church okay. You don't want a church service? You don't, okay. That's
Yeah,
are you sure? Are you sure? And sometimes that conversation might not be a conversation you have with a loved one, but it might be a conversation you have with your support system. My mom doesn't want a church service. Like, she's been going to church. She's made me go to church for how many years, but you don't want a church service? And and you have that conversation with the other people of your support system that are around you. Maybe it's your brother, maybe it's your best friend, and your best
right.
friend's like, well, I mean, I wouldn't want a church service either, and you're like, not you right now, I'm talking about my mother, and stuff like that. And it gives you an opportunity to kind of just look at reality, because sometimes moms don't want church services, and you sit there going, what would you make me go to church? But okay, you don't want church service, and I have to respect that. Okay, that's good. And it's about what they want. It's about respecting their wishes, and that's all a
Right.
part of that anticipatory grief stuff. Of these are some of the feelings that I'm going through. It's the same stuff. It's the same stuff that we go through as on the grief cycle. We go through that, like, that shock, that denial. This isn't happening. They'll get better. They'll get better. I,
Sure.
but it's sometimes you do get shocked about what they want.
Hmm. Another thing, let me just make sure. Yep. Okay. I had double check. I had the slide to consider, like Liz was saying about talking to other people in your support group, and reach out and find out more about, what to expect as things are going on. With our palliative program and our hospice program, we have wonderful, wonderful staff, nurse practitioners, social workers, and they can help you understand what is going to happen, so that you really are aware of the condition and what the prognosis is. And just what could happen along the way, so that you are not as much in shock, and you recognize what's happening. Because sometimes we're so afraid that we don't know, but if you can control something and educate yourself a little bit, it can really help. So what we've talked about, sharing with others. These support groups are wonderful, that, you feel like you're not alone. And it gives you that opportunity to just open up, to show those feelings where you may not be able to in the home, or share with family members. I believe on a call earlier this week, we heard someone talk about it as like airplane. It's an airplane mode. I forget the term, but it was basically like sometimes you strike up a conversation, a complete stranger on an airplane, and it's amazing about those conversations. Same thing, can happen, just to let a complete stranger know what you're going through. Just that release of emotions can be very helpful.
And something to also mention is that a lot of times, especially with our Delaware hospice patients and things, is that the caregivers and the loved ones are available to reach out to our bereavement staff. Every single one of our bereavement staff offers pre-bereavement services, and the and any of our caregivers or patients and things can reach out to those services as well. So even if you cannot find maybe necessarily a support group or some support in that regard, you can definitely reach out to Delaware Hospice to kind of talk about some of these feelings of the anticipatory grief.
Yes, definitely. One other thing we'll just mention here on this slide that I think is so important is about self-care. To really make sure you're taking care of yourself. Like speaking of an airplane, we talk a lot about when those oxygen masks come down. You put yours on first before anyone else because you have to make sure you are okay. So it's not try not to feel guilty about doing that. You have to make sure that you are in the best place that you are physically, emotionally, mentally. And it could be as simple as a cup of coffee with maybe some whipped cream and chocolate shavings as a little treat, but just something to look forward to for you because this is a difficult journey. And again, reaching out to those that are in your circle, in your bubble, to really help you and to be able to accept that help. That can sometimes be difficult for people as well, but just to allow others to help so that you can be there for your loved one. And finally, try to create some of those memories. If you can, go outdoors together. If the person is able to do something like a puzzle, and if not, maybe it's as simple as listening to music. We had a comment yesterday, if someone is not able to get outside, to put a bird feeder out there to attract birds to look at, perhaps put a pumpkin outside this time of year to attract wildlife. And then just something to look at, to enjoy, because it's the little tiny things, these little moments that you and family members will remember for years and years to come. Any questions or comments before we move on?
I think the only other thing to be mindful, especially with self-care and just dealing with anticipatory grief at all, is something I always say to children, and so that's not something I wouldn't say to adults either, is that no matter how prepared you are, you're never prepared. You're never prepared.
Right.
We can do all the research, we can try to read up on things and look out for signs and symptoms of maybe decline and stuff like that. But at the same point in time, when our loved ones die, when our loved ones pass away, when our loved ones, when they actually do that, we're never prepared. We're never prepared. I always tell the children that, you don't have a one up, so to speak, because your loved one is on hospice care, meaning that your loved one only has 6 months or less to live. You don't have a one up on that, because either way, they're still, everybody dies is what it was what I tell the children. Everybody dies. All living things die. I don't know how I did it, but I killed a succulent. You're not supposed to kill succulents. Like, they're supposed to be really hardy and you just water them like once a week, maybe 2 weeks. You just check in. And I killed the succulent. Okay. And I tell that to children only because I said, but all living things die, right? Did I mean to kill the succulent? No, I was really trying to be diligent and not try to kill this succulent, because you're not supposed to kill succulents or something, right? But it died because living things die. It looked pitiful, but it was what it was, right? Because it just stopped living. It just stopped being able to do the things that it was able to do. And there's nothing that we can do. A lot of times, we feel guilty. I could have done this, or I shouldn't have left then, or I should have done that. For self-care, we need to know that we can't get on ourselves about that. We also need to take care of ourselves, and we can't feel guilty about, I should be there instead. No. We need to do what we need to do for ourselves too.
So incredibly important. And as you were talking about children, this is a perfect segue to talk about how it is that children grieve. Liz, do you want to go ahead since you are definitely the expert in this field? Would you like to just talk about these points?
Sure, sure, absolutely. So yeah, children experiencing death actually happens probably more common than we want to admit or that we want to even know or acknowledge. Um, and part of that also is because children are known as the um, oh gosh, now I'm blanking out, pardon me, but I think this is a forgotten mourner. Yes, it came back to me. Children are known as the forgotten mourner because, adults are worried about their own grief. The adults are worried about how they're grieving and they kind of forget about the kid. Oh, they're too young. They don't understand. They don't know what's going on. That's actually not the case. The grief comes in waves with the kids just as much as it do for the adults, but it's in shorter spans. Sometimes a kid can be fine and perfect 1 second and then have a full blown out meltdown crying, "Oh, Miss Nana, she was my best friend." And then they wipe away their tears and they're like, "Can we go outside and play soccer?" And the parent or caregiver is like, "What just happened? I went on this emotional roller coaster." And the kid's like, "But I'm fine. Can I play soccer?" But like, "Can I play soccer?" And the parent or caregiver is like, "But you were just crying for the last, can we talk about that?" And they're like, "No, I want to play soccer. Can I play soccer?" I just want to play soccer. So the waves, as much as like we have the grief waves that we've talked about, with adults, or maybe you will hear about it. We haven't talked about that much, but those waves are actually shorter in time with kids.
I
And so
think it has to deal, it's with their attention spans, right? Like that science behind it. They're little kids. And
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. It's their attention span, and it's also their intellectual capacities. If you're working with a 3-year-old, they're not, they can't conceptualize that. But if you're working with a teenager, are they going to throw a fit? Their fits look a little different. Let's just be honest, right? Their fits look a little different, especially the tween age. I hate the tweet age, but we all have to go through it, right? They're sitting there and they're giving you such attitude and such sass, but yet they're going through it, and so that fear and anxiety and insecurity that we've listed here, those ranges of emotions, they come out as anger. Let's be real. Let's be real. They come out in attitude. They come out in sass. They come out, especially in the teenage years, they come out in perhaps potential use of drugs and alcohol. Let's just be honest, right? So that's the things you kind of have to look for with the emotions. But the little children, like they have tantrums. They have little tantrums, or explosive tantrums, so that's what you have to look for. But they can't really tell you, I'm scared. They throw a fit. They cry. They can't tell you what's wrong with them. And they ask some of the bluntest questions because that's how their brain works, and they want you to tell them the truth. They well, where did Pop go? He went to a better place. Why didn't I get invited to the better place? What's up with that? Where's my invitation? Did my invitation get lost in the mail? Well, can I go there? Well, let's go. Well, you see them packing up a bag. What are you doing? Richard, what are you doing? I'm going to get Pop because you said he's in this better place, so I'm gonna go. And we're like, oh wait, okay, I should have said that. Okay, it's a little differently. But common questions are, when will they die? And the thing about that question is, they ask that because they see a deterioration. They see, oh, my mom used to be able to walk and talk, and now she's stuck in bed and she's barely, breathe. Like, is she breathing? Watch for the chest to rise, and they hear nurses coming in and CNAs coming in, and they hear volunteers coming in, telling, either their parent or their grandparent or the loved one or whoever, watch for this and watch for that. And they're like ear hustling, oh, I have to watch for this and watch for that and watch for that. So they're like, well, when are they going to die? And you're like astounded. You're like, well, why do you think they're going to die? And they're like, I'm not stupid. I just heard the nurse come in and say, you have to watch for this and watch for that and watch for that. And when you're not real with them, when you're not straight with them, when you don't give them that blunt answer, they think other things. So their imagination goes wild and they think, okay, so then the angel will come down and swoop to, and they think they make up their own truths instead of hearing the truth from who they need to hear it from. you know.
Exactly.
And so I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just agreeing with you. Sorry. I
Yeah.
should have had it on mute.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah. And so, and it's just, we don't want that to happen, right? We don't want them to just be thinking about their own thoughts. We want to give them true things. With the when question though, we don't know when. So we tell them the truth. I don't know when. I don't know, I don't know what will happen sometimes, we can't predict, so we tell them that. I wish I could tell you, but I don't know. I don't know. And that's just me not knowing myself what's going to happen.
And as hard as it is, we have to be honest with them and give them as concrete of an answer as we can and just tell them. Mhm.
Do
And
you
what
have to,
about, go
so
ahead.
sorry.
I'm sorry, Liz.
I
Go
was just
ahead.
going to say, do you have to be, very medically explicit and gory and things like, no, you don't have to be that honest, but you have to be honest enough so that they're not thinking and making up their own truth in their head. And you have to be honest enough so that fast forward to when they're 20, they're not like, my caregiver or my parent or whoever is survivor lied to me. They lied to me. Why would they do that? Why would they keep that from me? Why would they lie to me? Especially the teens, especially the teenagers, when they feel as though that whoever is, then going to be their caretaker, or whoever's the survivor and left has lied to them. It does not end well. Let's just say that. There's a lot of other things that have to happen. So yes. Some other
What,
questions kind of come up, is always, there is one of, will I be there? And that's honestly something that's a tricky question. It's more or less of a, it's twofold, right? Because what I usually say to either a parent or a caregiver is, if you can, if you can create an environment that is still safe for the child, because a lot of adults, we say they don't need to see that, they don't need to see that, but sometimes for a child that can be a piece of closure for the child and they can handle it. But you have to ask them that. They they are the ones that can know that. And so, will I be there? And it's also, if they don't have anywhere else to go, like if you don't have, Aunt Sally's that they can go to, or, a neighbor or something like that they can go to, they might have to be there. So, we create safe spaces. You have to stay in your room, or you have to stay in the kitchen, or wherever the case may be. Sometimes it's not really feasible for them to not be there. But you can still create a safe environment. It doesn't mean that they'll stay there. Because, if things are going on, they're going to want to see it. They're going, they can't help their curiosity, but you can try hard, and you can try to make it so that they stay there. But they are curious. They're very curious at any age, really. They want to know what's going on. They don't like feeling that they're left out.
I love that idea of safe space. That is it's just very powerful and yet very, very simple.
Absolutely. And you call it that. You call it the safe space, or you make them make up a name for it, because it helps them feel like they're a part of the decision making.
Yes. I know
And
one of
that's
the
really
questions, oh, I was just going to say, one of the questions that I hear a lot, leading into these next ones about, well, am I going to die? Who's going to take care of me? And some of the New Hope counselors at Delaware Hospice, I remember saying, you tell them what you can control, whether that is, I wear my seatbelt, I don't text when I drive, I exercise, I eat healthy. And sometimes that's enough to help children to see what they can control, at least for the time being. But to your point earlier, being honest with them to say, we just don't know. We never know. But for those people that are here to take care of you and to love you, we do what we can to control what we can.
absolutely. Absolutely. And and they're always worried about, especially if it is in a two adult household, they are worried about the other one dying too.
Mm-hmm.
Always, will my dad died, will my mom die? That often comes up a lot. What's actually been kind of common lately, unfortunately, is I've seen a trend that multiple grandparents have been dying. And so it's really hard for the children because they're like, just all my grandparents gonna die, and again, if you kind of, what I usually try to say to help with that is, again, that I'm not saying it doesn't take the sting away. But we don't know when it's anybody's time. We don't know when it's anybody's time.
Yeah.
That's not our decision, and things like that. But they always ask, will I die? When's my time? We don't know. We don't know when it's anybody's time. But what I was just saying, it's a part of life. Dying is a part of life. All living things die. An activity that we try to do sometimes is think about anything that has died. A good one I like to mention is, has your caregiver's phone ever died before? Oh yeah, then we just got to plug it in. I got to go get the charger. Yes, that's a different kind of die, and just explaining to them what we say, as what's died or not, but then there's sometimes where computers die, but they really die, and there's no helping them. You gotta just throw them out or bang them out in the like really chuck them in the the garbage or something, or take them someplace that will be destroyed or something like that. But yes, anything you can say to them that can help them through that understanding is helpful, though, especially if it's their first death. But I think my biggest thing about the anticipatory grief with children, though, is that, a lot of folks, I shouldn't say a lot of folks, but I will say some folks think that they don't need to know until they've died. And I really strongly am against that statement, because they feel and they're aware of what is happening. Even a baby can feel differences and changes in moods and in environments. Pets feel it too. When a loved one dies for a pet, the pet goes through grief as well. So, I mean, I really am strongly against that. Children aren't on a need to know basis in that regard, if that makes sense. They need to know that what's happening, so that they can process what they see and what they're ear hustling. When they hear the nurse say, okay, her labor breathing, and I don't know the medical terms, okay, but when the nurses are saying their medical terms, insert medical terms here, the kid is like, oh, I'm learning all this new language. And you can always tell when a kid has been ear hustling and no one knows, because when I say what's happening with whoever, and they spit it back out at me, and I'm like,
they're listening.
What are you doing your homework?
Yeah.
You can always tell. The kid spits it right back out. They can anticipate it just as much as any adult can.
And so when you're working with someone before, I imagine then after that person does pass away, it would make it easier for you because you've already developed this bond with the child, and then to help them heal.
Yes. I have noticed that if I get the chance to meet with a child before the death, they like to, they're consistent in their appointments with me, if that makes sense. Throughout, I guess, the grief process. New Hope is available for 13 months after the death, and I feel like I'm lying with that. It might be more than that, but anyway, either way, we're here for an extended period of time after the death. So, but what I do find is that if I happen to meet with the child before the death, I find that there's more consistency with meeting throughout the grief process, up until the amount of time that we would have to then discharge and find a community resource, for the child to move on to if we feel it's necessary. So, Um,
And one of the things I love about the New Hope program with children, that in addition to having those individual discussions, that there are other things. As a matter of fact, there's a workshop next week where you're making Christmas ornaments for loved ones,
yes.
and these support groups. And then of course there's Camp New Hope, that amazing 4-day camp in the summer, completely free too, where the children get to be with other children who have lost someone. And one of the things, I mean, my 3 children have gone through it, and twice, for different at different times when other people have died in our family. And just that ability for them to be with other children, and they get it. They can talk to someone else who understands what it's like to not have mommy or daddy or grandma or grandpa there. And what I find so incredibly wonderful is that you don't have to have had that loved one go through the hospice program. It's for anybody available in the community, which is just incredible to me.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I know that I was talking a little bit about the anticipatory grief and some of our Delaware hospice patients. However, anybody from the community can also be reach out. Can also reach out to our New Hope program and utilize our services, which again I think is wonderful. To just recognize that there could be numerous people grieving and trying to cope, trying to find the tools and the means to cope. So a lot of our um, a lot of our community referrals are actually from the schools. They're actually from school
Yeah.
counselors. Oh, hey, I have this student, we don't have enough pupils or individuals for a school group. However, would you be able to reach out to them one-on-one? And what does that look like for for the child and for for the caregiver?
And I know you had sent me some books earlier today,
Yes.
about some that are just really great, for children that are going through this. And I do have one other slide. I know you sent me 4, but I wanted to make them larger on the screen. So do you want to just talk quickly to these 2, and then I will go to the next slide?
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you paired these two together. So these 2 books are actually about a dad who has cancer. And it is, they're both written well. However, what I will say is Cinnamon Roll Sunday really emphasizes the fact that as much as everything is changing for the dad and for the child in the story, that the one thing that doesn't change is that they get cinnamon rolls on Sunday. So as the anticipatory grief is happening, what's really important for all children, especially when the death happens as well, is that something in the schedule remains the same. So for this particular book, it's that they get cinnamon rolls on Sundays, and it's the dad that goes with the boy and gets the cinnamon rolls, and then they get the paper too. And it's a ritual. It's a ritual, and that's really important even after the death happens. I always mention like ice cream Tuesdays. Pizza, of course, is always an easy one. It's something that can be done really simply, because again, when you are the thing about anticipatory grief is when you're a caregiver for the patient, things happen all the time in a moment's notice. And so when, but it's really simple to call up Domino's or to call up Grotto's or to call up your favorite pizza place, okay, and have them deliver a pizza so that way your child can still have, pizza Fridays or, ice cream, hopefully we have in the freezer, right? So that it's always there on Tuesdays, and so, but the beauty of you have DoorDash and other, I only have DoorDash around here. So, but the beauty of other things that are available upstate and other places, Uber Eats and stuff like that, you can get from Wawa ice cream and have it delivered to your house too. So that Tuesday, ice cream Tuesdays can be easy as well. Make it something so that it doesn't have to be a cinnamon roll Sunday, maybe, but maybe it could be, you know what I mean? But that's a little harder, you know what I mean? I'm trying to make it easy, because when things come in a moment's notice, you could still, the kid could probably take your phone and order Domino's pizza,
True.
let's be real. So, and Flamingo Dream is about a dad who has cancer, but it focuses more on life and love and the journey of life, more than, and some symptoms and some changes that are happening too. But it is focused on, these fathers having cancer. it can help you through the anticipatory grief though, but yes. And then another book that I was looking at is Promises. So Promises is a book is actually about a mother that has cancer. And I know that these are all books that where the parent has cancer, but that is what is out there. So Nancy is actually thinking about writing her own book. But anyway, that's another story. Promises is about a mother that has cancer. And it goes through her struggle of cancer, how she gets sick and the treatment that she has to go on. But then she gets better and she's in remission. But the book is based upon how she can't make a promise that she can't get sick again. And I think it's a great book to show that even though you're in remission, you can't promise again that you can't get sick. Promises with kids and death are very tricky. You really try hard not to make promises because then the kid recognizes that you make promises that you can't keep. It's so difficult with kids and promises. I never make a promise I can't keep. I never make a promise I can keep. It's just something that it's probably something that I think my mom kind of ingrained in my head when I was younger, because she made no promises that she couldn't keep. And I can't remember if that was something that happened before or after my dad died, but it's stuck and I'm not a kid anymore. And then when someone has a very serious illness is actually a workbook. It's actually a workbook that has open pages to fill in for children to draw, to sometimes write, but more draw. So it's ranged from ages, writing age, like maybe 4-ish to about a young 9 or 8 or 9. If they're older, if they're like an older 10, they're not going to want to be bothered with this book. They might humor you if they have like a younger sibling and they're helping the younger sibling along. So I've had situations like that, like, why didn't you bring a book for me? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I thought you were more mature than this. What was I thinking? I'm so sorry. We'll have to get more copies or something. I've had commentary like that. Well, where's my book? I'm so sorry. But other than that, it is a great workbook. There's also a workbook called When Someone Very Special Dies, similar to this workbook format, that I know that we've used or we've recommended for families before. But the workbook goes over all the feelings that you go through, all of the possible scenarios that you go through when someone is very seriously ill, and I like the serious illness part because it isn't specifically cancer. So I wanted to make sure that I got something else besides that. But again, the books don't exist. So, Nancy's working on her book writing skills. So here we are.
Well, that is wonderful. It'd be great to have one of our very own New Hope counselors writing a book. We would love that. And absolutely. I love how this says illustrated by children. I think that is, I think that's just wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing these.
Yes. And Nancy's funny. She's like, I'm looking for this book and I really don't think it's out there. And I'm like, you have to write it.
There you go. Thank you so much for sharing that. As we're wrapping up, we're about 45 minutes, so we're doing great on time. I just want to bring up a few of the other sessions that we have. We've been doing these sessions now. This is our 3rd day. So here are a few more that we'll be sharing today. Things I wish I'd known before my loved one dies, and then some unique ways to remember your loved ones. And then another type of grief, the grief journey associated with a divorce. So we'll be sharing some information there. And then tomorrow for our Thanksgiving holiday, just something very uplifting, very brief, but just something to recognize what is going on in the world, and then to really show gratitude and count our blessings for those things that we have. One other component of Take Out the Stigma of Grief Week involves food, and who doesn't like food, and some drink here too with Frank's Liquor Store. So as part of Take Out the Stigma of Grief, we are raising awareness of the types of grief, but then take out food. We have these restaurants here that are donating a portion of their proceeds to Delaware Hospice so that we can offer programs like New Hope to children free of charge. So there's a number there, and you can get more information at the website there at the bottom of the screen. And then I must also recognize the Delaware Hospice Festival of Trees that's going on. I was actually at Michael's last night, and the cashier saw my mask that said Delaware Hospice and said, "Oh, Festival of Trees, I missed it this year, but I did see the video. I was so excited to hear that. There is a wonderful video that is out there at festivalofTreesDE.org. That is Festival at Home. And even though we can't be in person, you can still see all the magnificently decorated trees and wreaths that normally we would see outside of a pandemic. There's an opportunity on our website to vote for your favorite tree, and there are some wonderful ones. To purchase remembrance ornaments for your own loved one who has passed. And then also a huge component of Festival of Trees, one of my favorites is shopping. There are always so many wonderful things that the volunteers make all year. So there's still an opportunity to purchase things at the Marketplace Etsy shop. And just a reminder that we are here for you. Delaware Hospice is your community hospice, and we offer so much more than just the hospice services. Our palliative program, our bereavement program, which we spoke about today for children through New Hope, and also bereavement support for adults as well. We also have a program that is more community resource based, our transitions program. That is for people that may not need the medical care, but just might need some help in the community and getting access to some resources. So there is a plethora of things that we have. We're only a phone call or a click away on the website, but we are here for you. Special thanks to a wonderful organization called Wing Mom, who actually was the brainchild of Take Out the Stigma of Grief Week. They are literally building a village of moms that help families and seniors. Basically, we'll do anything you need. It could be tutoring a child, to doing your laundry, to picking up someone at the airport. They're a wonderful organization in Newcastle County that is quickly spreading to Kent and to Sussex. And then finally, just a nod to our corporate sponsors. Through our wonderful partnerships with these sponsors and our community and our volunteers and donors, we're able to offer so many incredible programs, many of them free of charge throughout the community. Liz, I would like to thank you again for taking the time, right on the cusp of a holiday weekend or holiday week, I guess, and then into the weekend, but for sharing with us your personal story and then helping us understand what it is, particularly as it relates to children, and then some resources for them. Well, happy holidays, everyone. Thank you for spending some time with us today. Please stay healthy and safe and wash your hands. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving.